Armando Lannucci's Charm Offensive, presented by Armando Lannucci.
Thank you very much. That music, inappropriate to my character, introduces us all to the first in a new series of Armando Lannucci's Charm Offensive, in which, as is suggested by the title, I will be both charming and making remarks about the Pope and the Nazis. All that in a show which, only by my threatening to put MRSA through Broadcasting House's ventilation shafts, did I prevent Radio 4 from calling a midweek romp. And I've got to start by stressing that the political situation at the moment is very fluid. As we record the show, Tony Blair is still Prime Minister for an historic third day. But that could all change by the time this goes out. So to give us the latest state of play on Blair's position, throughout the show we'll be hearing from top political expert Gordon Brown, who'll be on hand to tell how long the Prime Minister will last. Gordon.
6 months.
Thank you, Gordon. Now, of course, as we go on through the night, that figure could come down, couldn't it, Gordon?
18 weeks.
So, as I say, very fluid out there indeed. Now, the Charm Offensive is a sort of midweek drop-in centre for homeless panellists who haven't got a topical show to go to until Friday. And tonight we've got three of the best of them, so please welcome Phil Jupitus, John Oliver and Clive Anderson. And I'd like to kick off by us all standing down. Over the past few days, the country has gone standing down crazy. The leaders of the Tory party, the Lib Dems in Scotland, the Ulster Unionists have all stood down. Channel 4's political editor, Eleanor Goodman, has just announced she's standing down. And Andrew Marr has said he's going to stand down but hasn't done so yet, which actually makes him a lame duck chief political editor. So anyone who's been away on holiday for a week will come back seeing Britain as an empty, deserted wasteland, like some strange new edition of Doctor Who, but without Christopher Eccleston's gurning. Who, by the way, is also standing down to spend more time in front of a mirror. So, to begin with tonight, I'd just like to ask everyone in the team whether they're going to stand down, and who else they'd like to see stand down. Phil?
I think as a disc jockey, it's taken as a given that I stood down some years ago from just, having a regular career. Because all my kids' mates, parents, they're doctors and lawyers and coppers and things like that. Oh, what do you do? Well, if you email me, I'll play you a Ruts B-side. I'm basically a jukebox with an appetite.
Do you not consider that a serious position, then?
No, it's not, is it, really? I am just a big old hungry iPod.
Who's eaten 10,000 songs. Clive, are you still standing?
It's odd, isn't it? You don't stand down, you stand up, or you sit down. But in politics, they stand down. They lie even about their position.
John?
There's all this call for Tony Blair to stand down, but in a sense, he's already gone. He wasn't on the front of the Labour Party manifesto, so thus he's become the first leader in history to despotically airbrush himself out of a photograph since Joseph Stalin airbrushed himself out of his school netball team. He was never in that team.
I think Tony Blair's view was that the electorate should have stood down.
Well, they kind of did. Most of them did. In not turning up to vote. It was the second lowest voter turnout since 1918, when, to be fair, people were a bit busy being dead.
Labour didn't do very well. The Tories really didn't take off. The Lib Dems didn't have a breakthrough. So they all really, by the end, lost.
Yeah.
Right?
It was an
all
all-losers
like the end
election.
of Reservoir Dogs. But the other interesting thing from the last few days is that Blair's authority has disappeared. His cabinet reshuffle was mostly people saying, "I got off. I'm not going."
He brings back people. People resigned from the Labour government. In the old days, John Profuna resigned and he went into charity work for the rest of his life. Rather than nobody. Now they don't so much resign. They go and sit on the naughty step for a couple of weeks.
I'd love to have actually heard, the correspondent and Andrew Marr going and in there in number 10 they are having the reshuffle and you hear a piano playing and then it suddenly stops.
Jeff Hoon storms out number 10 looking very, very disappointed. Yeah. But in order to sort of accommodate all his ministers' whims, because they refused to do what he asked them, because he's the cabinet's gimp now, Tony Blair. He's had to come up with all sorts of bizarre-sounding new departments and ministries to Ministry of... Was it productivity and...
Productivity, energy and industry. It sounds like a couple of chapters from A Pilgrim's Progress. It's not a... I mean, you can't really be not busy if you're working there. Oh, it's productivity, energy, industry. Go, do something.
There's an ambassador to Narnia.
Chancellor of the Duchy of Duke Street.
Minister for Tough Love.
Blunkett's in charge of pensions and illegitimate children.
That's quite a bad job for them, isn't it, pensions? Because they're constantly going on about the pensions time bomb. And it turns out that North Korea has actually developed the pensions time bomb. And they've got it. And France are testing theirs in the Pacific at the moment. There's an island there that's entirely populated by grannies.
Now, one thing, of course, that was noticed over the election was how dependent Blair became on Brown. We taped one of the Labour rallies that Blair was speaking at over the election, and if you listen very carefully, you have to listen very carefully, you can actually hear Gordon Brown in the background prompting Blair what to say.
So here are 10 things a future Labour third term can do for Britain's hard-working families. 1.
The economy.
Low mortgage rates, rising living standards, more jobs in every region of the UK, and with the money saved,
pensions.
Design a pension system that has the basic state pension at its core and provides incentives to save
hard-working families.
For hard-working families.
By the way, I ought to point out that throughout the show, to give you, the listener, the fastest, most comprehensive overview of the discussion as it happens, we'll be lacing the programme with 2 graphics. There's this one to indicate something's happened. And this one to indicate the arrival of a postal vote. How did you take to the graphicisation of this general election?
I was part of the graphicisation.
Oh, well.
I was at the ITV party, which we had on a boat by the London Eye. So I was brought in to zhuzh up the election. So I was there. I was chewing the fat with Joan Collins. I was shooting...
Was there a lot of fat to chew?
No. Shooting the breeze with Tony Benn and arguing the toss with Andrew Neil. So I was there. And it was a very jolly party. But apparently it was... more or less condemned as being rather trivialisation of the whole thing.
Oh, but sorry, I should have said, turning to you, Clive.
I'm sorry, I didn't see the graphics. Were they good this year, then?
They were tip-top. Over to you, John.
They were amazing, yeah. I think it's probably true now that...
Pressure's on you, Phil.
I think pretty much now that the people that make the graphics must just be doing it for a bet. Now, they must just be in the pub the previous night going, I bet you £20 that I can get Peter Snow to present anything. Oh, really? I'll take that bet. Do you reckon you could get him to commentate in front of an animation of the 3 main party leaders strutting down Downing Street like self-confident Barry Gibbs? Do you reckon you could do that? And he would look back and say, I don't even view that as a challenge.
So one thing on election, I couldn't work out whether Robert Kilroy Silk was a graphic. So did you want me to hand over to you, Phil?
Yes. Armando. You see, me, I have to go to bed early, and so I miss the actual coverage during the night. So I got up at 4 a.m. when every television presenter had lost the will to live. And it was like the end of Lord of the Flies. Paxman stripped to the waist with blood on his chest, wearing his tie as a headband, proclaiming himself God, eating the head of John Pienaar.
My God, that's a big head, isn't it?
Last him into the long winter.
Let's move on. But before we leave the election, I'd just like to point out there's no points awarded to guests on this show, but we will be measuring how they're doing using a new computer graphic called Starfish. Now, Starfish is so called because it stands for State-of-the-Art Final Information Studio Holographer, and also because it's an actual starfish. There you are. I'm showing it to the studio audience now. Interactive listeners can see it on our webcast, which I'm sure we've somehow got. Phil, you're admiring my starfish.
You're turned away from me at the moment, Armando. Are you talking through your starfish?
Well, there you are. I'll just explain this. It is a dead starfish we got from an aquarium that's just gone into receivership. And,
surely if it's an aquarium, it would be liquidation it would go into.
Starfish has 5 legs. Each one represents one of tonight's panellists, and me and a 5th thing. And we can measure how well anyone's doing by looking at the angles between the legs. So let's feed the results so far into our dead sea creature. And there you can see our saltwater corpse shows it's extremely tight. Gordon, how long till Blair goes?
2 days from now.
Thank you. OK, the next round's called Prince Harry. Prince, hardly anything he's done has he done by himself, more like. Arama. And as is explained by the title, it draws attention to the most recent exploits of Britain's favourite russet head. So can I ask everyone, are we being unfair to Prince Harry by implying that he got into Sandhurst on the basis of a falsified art A-level?
I think the reason why people perhaps are interested is because we, the British people, really like the idea of a royal being shouted at. Because usually they just get waved at with flags or hands. It's very, very seldom do royal people have someone shout at them, "You horrible little worm," unless it's by a very bad translator who meant to say, "Welcome to Mexico." I think that's funnier than any of you gave it credit for.
That's a brilliant line. That'll be such a useful...
Starfish's limp members say otherwise.
Well, he hasn't got a brilliant academic record. He's got an A-level in geography and art, which basically qualifies him to colour in maps. But school is supposed to training you for your career in later life. And in his later life, he is going to be getting people to do things for him because he's a prince, for goodness sake.
So he should have taken an A-level in opening sports centres.
And somebody could have done it for him. That's,
committing adultery. Advanced.
Do you really believe, though, that his A-level art mark was critical in whether he got into Sandhurst or not? I can't believe there's some sergeant major saying, "Harry, your work is derivative and shallow. You are not Sandhurst material. You're rehashing what Francis Bacon did 20 years ago, boy. Now drop and give me 20.
Maybe he doesn't realise it's Sandhurst. Perhaps he's been tricked. He's been told it's Hogwarts or something. Or it's just a very, very well-organised 44-week-long party.
Yeah. Somewhere we can dress up in military uniforms.
Yes.
Which
he's a dab hand at that. At which you have to bring an ironing board.
Yeah. You have been invited to participate in the reality TV show Ironing Academy. I've got a fiver that says he's already slept with it.
I think we were true.
An ironing board? How?
The Joy of Sex manual with all the different leg positions. Cover off, cover on.
Oh, no, don't be serious. It's always cover on. Be safe.
Safe ironing board sex. Here on Radio 4.
We were tough at our school. We just did it with irons. And not just set to cotton.
Yeah. Linen. Yeah.
Well,
we've gone from charm to offensive, haven't we?
Well, we're at the halfway point in the show. Time to look at Starfish to see how everyone's doing. So let's feed all the information into our slabbed-out merm computer. And goodness me, Starfish is showing we're in for a long evening. Well, something else that's reached its halfway point is the trial of Michael Jackson, which this week sees the start of the defence case. Now, whatever the outcome, Jackson is himself going to emerge from all this with a pretty battered reputation, though still beautiful face. His commercial value will be very low. He will, in effect, be a lame duck, Michael Jackson. So to prevent this happening, we need advice from Michael Jackson's lawyers to help him win any advice. If only we had, well, I don't know, a music expert and a barrister on the panel tonight. John, over to you.
I don't know much about the law, but what I do know is this, that it is a pretty interesting defence to get people like Macaulay Culkin and Kobe Bryant in to testify that he did not abuse them. So that's two. Is he going to go through everyone? Because that surely is the only way that this works out. Just
that is their main defence, though, isn't it? It's like, yes, I was in bed with him, but, it's a pretty big bed. It's a mile wide, the bed. I mean, we wanted to get the bed in tonight to show everyone, but we can't...
It's bigger than this studio.
It is. So then we had to come up with a look-alike bed, commissioned by Tracy Emin.
It's a good job he didn't follow her plan, though, of making a tent with all the names of the people he's ever slept with.
The thing with Jackson is that he's got a very good defence because statistically a white woman stands a less chance of being prosecuted. I quite like this whole Jackson case has been raging for 6 months, and there's a great maxim, isn't there? There's no such thing as bad publicity. Well...
But is he making any music now? Is he
yeah, the thing to do is to get an album out when you're being accused of kiddie finger.
Yeah. The Jackson 5 are reforming, just for the ID parade. But
I mean, we have to, not exactly preface, but appendix this whole discussion with the codicil. Is that the right word?
Well, if you're making a will, it would be. But, it's not that bad.
And the way things are going tonight, I may well be.
Who are you going to leave your jokes to?
Bobby Davro. Now, of course, there is the possibility, the very great possibility, that Michael Jackson, of course, is innocent. Whatever the outcome, he is just going to be unable to make any money. He may well end up earning less than the Michael Jackson lookalike used on the TV reconstruction, who's becoming so famous that it's possible that someday the real Michael Jackson will earn a living as a lookalike for the lookalike Michael Jackson. Though if this happens, I think the universe explodes. OK, well, let's get back to the election now, with two of my favourite moments from the campaign. One was when Tony Blair was heckled by pro-fox hunting campaigner Otis Ferry. Now, Otis is brilliant. He broke into the House of Commons and brandished a man in tights. He gatecrashed Blair's victory party on the night after the election, and during the election in Gloucester, he managed to catch up with the Prime Minister and give him a piece of his mind. And so after all that work, as Blair came within range, Otis Ferry heckled Blair and only then realised that he hadn't actually worked out what to shout to him. And we've got a clip of this. It's absolutely genuine. We haven't doctored this clip. Here's Otis Ferry trying to heckle Tony Blair.
Stop smiling, you greasy! I haven't got words for you. Go away!
Talk about apathy. That is...
And the guy went to Eton. You know, that's what your money gets you from the top school in the country.
Oh, hang on,
greasy.
there.
Yes, he was waiting for someone else to heckle for him.
He can get in anywhere, can't he, Otis Ferry?
If only we could harness Otis Ferry for good.
He's so posh, and as nobody told him, you're named after a lift and a way of getting to the Isle of Wight.
Would it be ironic if Otis Ferry couldn't actually get into ferries?
Yeah. It would be.
Security procedure defeated him.
It would be, yeah. I've heard that he can't get into Moby Dick. He's restarted it 4 times. Just reads half a page and then... he wants to like it. He's heard it's a great book and believes it.
OK, well, I just want to move on to my other favourite moment from the election, which was Robert Kilroy Silk's result. I don't know why Kilroy, a Eurosceptic, called his party Veritas, which is Latin, even though Latin was once the language of an enormous European superstate. But that aside, it's worth pointing out that though Kilroy spent most of the election denying his party was just a gigantic ego trip, here's the full title he gave it on the ballot paper.
Kilroy Silk, Robert, Veritas party leader Robert Kilroy Silk, 2,957.
That's true. He decided to call his party in the end Veritas leader Robert Kilroy Silk, as if somehow that would make us remember it better and therefore work out why we didn't want to vote for it. But Kilroy Silk hasn't thought this through, because in time everyone's going to come up with a quicker way of saying Veritas leader Robert Kilroy Silk. which will be by just calling it by its initials. So it becomes the VLRKS, or VLRKS for short. Though VLRKS for short could be shortened to VFS, VLRKS for short, or VFAS, or V for short, or just short, or shit. So in future, remember, it's the shit party. Leader Robert Kilroy so. OK, well, just time to have a quick look at starfish. And our rotting nerve centre tells us that Phil Jupitus is only just clinging on. But one thing, I mean, we touched on it earlier, was that the whole jazzing up of the election coverage. And one thing I noticed about the TV election coverage in particular was that they spent the first hour, when there were no results, setting up pointless items designed to make the programme feel more lively, forgetting that after midnight, 600 seats were about to declare the results of a general election. So why is there this modern obsession with jazzing things up? Over there, Peter Snow's got a mock-up of the House of Commons and 600 rats. And as the results come through, we'll release the rats so you can see what the state of the parties would be if we were governed by rats. We'll also be joining John Sopel over in a massage parlour in Bedford where his back hair will be waxed in the shape of key marginals. Anna Ford's got a diamond that sparkles liberal democracy. Look down at her marvels, O ye people, and gasp in silent wonder. Gordon, when's Blair going?
Sunday.
Thank you. The BBC have been criticised this week for a decline in the number of their religious programmes that they're putting out, and have been asked to come up with ways of jazzing up their religious television, or indeed jazzing up religion. So
that's a doddle. Jazzing up religious programmes.
Oh, yeah.
Easy. Foresightal. You have a programme with all the gods on it. You vote them out every week. Shiva has gone into the room and has started destroying stuff. Ra doesn't like it.
But is that the only format we can do now? Big Brother is the only way of doing it on television. I mean, is that...
There's Strictly Come Methodism. in which no gambling takes place to a salsa beat.
I think there should be true balance, like there's been over the last few weeks regarding the political parties. I think any religious programme should have to end with the announcer saying, of course, all of this could be rubbish.
No, that's great. Oh, well, so we were actually able to come up with something, which is a relief, because Von Savage had spent all day recording a series of hilarious, up-to-date commandments. Don't know if you want to hear any of that.
Thou shalt not commit adultery first. Remember, I am the god of hellfire, and I bring you fire. Thou shalt not click on false icons. Remember the Sabbath day, to keep it large. Thou shalt not lay up for thyself a cache of adult JPEGs. Thou shalt do no one. Thou shalt not bear silent witness with Amanda Burton. In times of adversity, thou shalt leave it.
There's 10,000 of these. Haven't got much time. Now, not all the votes are in. Lots of people voted, of course, by post, which means they've only just arrived now. So now it's time for us to have postal vote election special. Hundreds of thousands of votes are coming in, most of them from one postal address in Birmingham. And for this, we've got a graphic of a piece of falling paper. Any last-minute postal votes you've got?
I've got one here for you, Armando, from the key marginal of Timothy West.
I've got a lovely election moment here. I've got a postal vote from Emily, who's just 4 years old. But she's very interested in politics, and she's made her own ballot paper out of card and tissue paper, and she's voted BNP.
Just got George Galloway's postal vote here, and he actually voted for Una King.
I was thinking, but my favourite bits about George Galloway's win was that he immediately turned round and turned on the returning officer. And it was just quite refreshing to have him spin straight round, and just as you expected to come out, and you have run a disgraceful campaign.
Did you see the interview he did with Jeremy Paxman?
Oh, yeah, that was great as well.
In which Paxman, to be fair to George, Paxman applied his only interview technique, which is to ask the same stupid question of someone again and again and again until they either leave or die. We just need to remind ourselves of that interview just to refresh our memory.
Well, we're joined now from his count in Bethnal Green and Bow by George Galloway. Mr. Galloway, are you proud of having got rid of one of the very few black women in Parliament?
What a preposterous question. I know it's very late in the night, but wouldn't you be better by starting by congratulating me for one of the most sensational election results in modern history?
Are you proud of having got rid of one of the very few black women in Parliament?
I'm not, Jeremy, move on to your next question.
Are you
because
proud?
I've got a lot of people who want to speak to me. If you ask that question again, I'm going.
Don't try and threaten me, Mr. Galloway.
You are actually conducting one of the most absurd interviews I have ever participated in. Can't you find it within yourself even to congratulate me on this victory?
Congratulations, Mr.
Thank
Galloway.
you very much.
It's great, isn't it? And so I thought we'd end tonight by having a go on the, talking about jazzing the election up, on the Jeremy Paxmatron, which is a machine in which you can ask the same stupid question to George Galloway and make him walk out of it. I'll just try it. I'll have a go on the Paxmatron. Mr. Galloway, are you proud of having got rid of one of the very few women in Parliament whose first name, Una, rhymes with a type of fish?
What a preposterous question.
Mr. Galloway, are you proud of having got rid of one of the very few women in Parliament whose first name, Una, rhymes with a type of fish?
Move on to your next question.
Mr. Galloway, are you proud... It's great, isn't it?
Mr. Galloway, if I threw a frisbee across Bowtown Hall now, could you scamper and catch it in your mouth like a little dog?
What a preposterous question.
Mr. Galloway, I ask you again, if I threw a frisbee across Bowtown Hall, could you catch it in your mouth like something like a corgi or maybe a Staffordshire Bull Terrier?
Move on to your next question.
OK.
Well, Mr. Galloway, how do I get past the evil troll on level 4 of Caves of Doom?
What a preposterous question.
Mr. Galloway, what's that on your chin?
Move on to your next question.
Mr. Galloway, is the latest Oasis album any good?
What a preposterous question.
Mr. Galloway, if I said you had a beautiful body, would you hold it against me?
Absolutely right.
All right, well, there we go. That really is all we've got time for. There's just time to ask Gordon how long he's going to go on as Prime Minister.
22 years.
Thank you, Gordon. And that was this week's Charm Offensive. I'm Armando Lannucci. Good night.
That was Armando Lannucci's Charm Offensive, presented by Armando Lannucci. The guests this week were Clive Anderson, Phil Jupitus and John Oliver. It was written by Armando Lannucci and John Holmes, Danny Robbins, Will Smith, Ian Martin and Dan Tetzel. And the producer was David Tyler. The programme was a Positive production for the BBC.